Marianne Bassi is the chair of AFSA's Land Working Group and former chair of the AFSA board, and is joining us from Nigeria today, where she works for Friends of the Earth Africa. You're welcome, Marianne. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Welcome everybody once again to our meeting. We are very happy that you could all join in despite our busy schedules and millions of virtual meetings we all have to deal with because of the COVID. Without wasting time, I want to just briefly introduce our guest speaker for today. We are extremely fortunate and grateful that he agreed to speak with us here. And if not for the COVID, some of us maybe would have gone there to say this thing physically, but COVID also has its good side. I mean, he can speak to many of us from his states and in our different countries. So we are grateful for that. Like I said, we are extremely fortunate to have with us today the leader of perhaps the biggest agroecological transition project in the world, the community-managed natural farming initiative in India's Andhra Pradesh state. With 37 years of Indian government service, Vijay Kumar has spent 25 years in large-scale community mobilization and promotion of livelihoods of rural women, tribal communities, and farmers. He led the mobilization and empowerment of 11 million rural poor women into savings and loan-based self-help groups and federations, laudable project, to enable these women, farmers, and federations to pursue multiple livelihoods and come out of poverty. For the past 5 years, he has been leading the climate resilient community-managed natural farming initiative, building on the mobilization of women, very key. The vision is to convert all the 6 million farmers in the state by 2027, and to make the whole state a climate resilient and natural farming state. Ladies, gentlemen, comrades, allies, friends, without much ado, I present to you our guest star speaker, Vijay Kumar. Over to you, Vijay, and thank you for coming.
Thank you, Marianne. Thank you for your gracious and over-generous introduction. I hope I do justice to it. So I will dive in straight to the presentation. Yes, thank you, AFSA. Thank you, Million. Thank you, all friends who are present today. And when we had the first interaction, I mentioned that behind what we had achieved in Andhra Pradesh was the solid organizations of women, and building the social capital itself is a very important, very serious process with a lot of investment in time, efforts, and based on that, Million asked me to conduct a session exclusively on how we had worked on building the social capital of women, organizing women. So I know it's very difficult for me to share 20 years of work in 45 minutes. So that's an impossible task. But I hope in this brief period, I can impress upon everyone that this has to be a building block. This has to be the foundation on which agriculture transformation, on which all the sustainable development goals are based on this. So this is, in my opinion, a necessary condition because all these objectives have to be achieved in a very democratic manner with people at the center. And at the end of this, we can have different sessions on different modules of this work. Now, why is this important? Because when I started the climate resilient community managed natural farming, I had an advantage. I already had a platform of rural women who were organized. So if we have to complete the transformation worldwide in a very short period of time, we can only do it by building community organizations. In Andhra Pradesh, India, we choose rural women as the basic, building blocks. So it is their struggle, and through them we are achieving a much bigger objective. And I believe very strongly countries like India, all countries in Asia, Africa, South America, where large population is dependent on agriculture. So we have to move through organizing women, organizing farmers, organizing youth, organizing indigenous people. So here I am representing the case for organizing women, and through women the whole family. So in 2000, I was leading this organization called Society for Elimination of Rural Poverty. And from 2000 to 2010, for about 10 years, I was heading this organization. And this led to a national program called National Rural Livelihoods Mission. So I moved to Government of India to head that program for about 5 years. And 2015, I came back to Andhra Pradesh and took up natural farming program. So it's a journey of 20 years, last 20 years. So in Andhra Pradesh, we initiated this for eradication of poverty, organizing women. So this is our belief. Poverty is an affront to human dignity and a cost to the economy and the polity. Poverty creates vulnerability, dependence, and helplessness. It deprives society of the productive energies of a substantial segment of its population, contributing to instability and social unrest. And as you know, South Asia had the very high levels of poverty. And so there were a lot of discussions on what are the best ways of eradicating poverty. And in Andhra Pradesh, we took this route. So this called for a very different change in the paradigm. We took the route of empowerment, social capital, women organization as the route for coming out of poverty. Now, typically,
at the peak of its uprising, although this extreme effect will remain high.
There is some disturbance.
Sorry, please, whoever has his microphone or her microphone on, could you please mute?
So, as I was saying, when we started this, we were dealing with a dominant paradigm, which was a top-down approach, which looked at poor as passive, helpless, in need of assistance. But we said that is not the correct paradigm. We believe that poor are rich. And so this program was based on a rights-based approach to development, not looking at people as objects of charity, relief, but as active subjects charting their own destinies, enabling the poor to build their own organizations. And we believe that government NGOs need to get into long-term partnership with the poor. And that's a journey for both to actually enable a much better society to be built. So what does this mean in terms of operationalization? So the key pillars are rights-based approach, social mobilization, and partnership with poor. Now, this also requires a lot of investment in time and effort, and there are principles behind this. It doesn't get done just like that. It takes time, but you have to have the necessary toolkit for operationalizing this. And what are those principles? I'll come to practices, but what is the belief that this works? And first and foremost, one should recognize that there is tremendous potential within the poor to help themselves. And I'm saying this because it's easy to say this but not believe in this. So if you act, if you act with this belief internalized, then you can't go wrong. But if you just say this as a statement, then obviously you'll be on the wrong path. So once you believe that every human being, God resides in every human being, if you believe that everybody has potential and they are capable of helping themselves, then the question arises, why are they poor? So there are many obstacles. They could be religious, they could be social, economic, political, psychological. There are many obstacles, which is, coming in the way of harnessing their energies. So the second belief is that this potential can be harnessed by organizing them. The third principle is that the poor are willing to be organized. And fourth is there are champions among the poor who, in spite of being poor, are willing to help others. And this, all of you are, have been NGO leaders for such a long time. You must be experiencing this day in and day out. I don't have to tell you this. But the fifth one is very important, that you have to enable poor to build their own organizations. And everybody should be an active participant in their own organizations. And they should take decisions on all issues concerning poverty. Now, for this to happen, there's a need for a sensitive support organization to catalyze the change. These are the 8 principles, I would say, which underlie the work that we have done. But I just want to mention that it is easy to write these principles, it is easy to read them out, but the difficult task is internalizing them and acting on them at all times. And that is the key for enabling this to happen. So the state government set up the Society for Elimination of Rural Poverty, and I and my colleague were heading this. And I continued here for 10 years. So SERP was conceived as a sensitive support mechanism to trigger the social mobilization process that I discussed in the previous slide, and work with the organizations of the poor to enable them to access their rights, entitlements, enable them to build their organizations, enable them to amplify their voice, enable them to fight, enable them to take up issues with the government. At the same time, put pressure on the government to be pro-poor, bring out pro-poor policies. So it has to work on both sides. And what did help was that this was an initiative of the government. And I'm very happy to say that after around 7-8 years of SERP success in Andhra Pradesh, Government of India changed its model, national model. So the national model itself was based on our work. It's called the National Rural Livelihoods Mission. And I was the first mission director from 2010 to 2015. I'm happy to inform you that in the last 10 years, the National Rural Livelihoods Mission, working with state rural livelihoods missions across the country, has organized 70 million rural women in the country. So, it took me 10 years to reach 11 million. But when every state started doing this, we were able to reach 70 million across the country, and hopefully another 30 million in the next 5 years. So about 100 million rural women, organizations of 100 million rural women, they're There's a similar approach being followed for the urban poor also in India. Now, the vision of the government was that every person in the state should be out of poverty and enjoy life with dignity, equity within the family, freedom from hunger, decent income from sustainable livelihood from 3 to 4 sources, managing risk to life, health, assets, and income, and provision of shelter, education, and health. These are the basic minimum requirements. So, on the one hand, from the demand side, people are organized, and then there are pro-poor policies of the government, and it's very important to mention that both sides have to be active. It's not, if the government doesn't listen, then many of these things will not happen. So, how do you build institutions of the poor? This is I cannot go into this for want of time, but this was the most critical process. We have very good processes, protocols for enabling this to happen. In Andhra Pradesh, we chose women self-help groups as the basic model. And even prior to our work in 2000, in the previous one decade, from 1990 to 2000, there were a lot of NGOs who had actually developed this concept of self-help groups, savings-based groups, and also federations of these self-help groups. So they were basic models on ground. But when we started work, we were able to, very significantly improve. And we have very, very good protocols developed, which I'll try to explain in the next few slides. This is the work done in the undivided state of Andhra Pradesh. This is for the, from 2000 to 2013. So we had, organized around 11.7 million women into rural women, into self-help groups, into 1 million self-help groups. But you see, they were then federated as a village organization. And that means about 20 to 30 groups in a village. All the groups in a village come together as a federation. So this is a 10 to 12 member group. And then there's a federation of 15 to 25, in some cases 30. But the ideal is that the federation should be around 25. Then about 40 to 50 such federations form a second level federation at the mandal level, sub-district level. And then we had in the 22 districts, we had district federations. So this structure took us about 8 years, 8 to 9 years to build. And I'm happy to mention that even after the state bifurcation in 2014, so both the states are continuing with this work. So this is, I'm talking about undivided state of Andhra Pradesh, result of my work for about 10 years. And now I'll explain how we did this. This Mandal Samakya is Mandal is a sub-district unit. We actually, initially when I started the project, we recruited young professionals, 3 per mandal. And then we sent them to the villages to work with the most vulnerable communities. And we trained them around the formation of groups. So we had very good, young people directly from college who joined us. We sent them to villages. We had a very rigorous selection procedure. Actually, we used to send them to a village to stay there for a month, and we found that more than 50% ran away. So we thought it's good that those who remained are the ones really useful. And then through a process of training, we had succeeded in enabling them to stay in a village, be with the poor people, women, organize them. But after 3-4 years of doing this work, we changed our strategy. We then arrived at the concept of what we call as community resource persons. That means those women who had come out of poverty by being members of self-help groups and were willing to extend their knowledge as trainers, as resource persons to other villages, other mandals, and other districts and other states. So this diamonds among the community, the community champions. So these young people were able to identify these champions, and this strong, women leaders then took this process across the state. So it was not, it was induced initially by professionals that we had engaged, but for the expansion, for strengthening this, the most important and the most powerful source was basically the women champions themselves, and in some cases their children, their spouses. So this is what we mean by social capital: the self-help group leaders, their service providers, and our investment was in building their capacities, training, and many cases they themselves were the trainers. So about 4-5 years was a lot of churning of our own strategies on how do we take it forward. So this concept of the women leaders themselves being the champions, taking this message forward, enabling other villages to form their own groups. I will just explain to you through one Mandal Samakya, which which is among the best Mandal Samakyas in our state. Now, we also enabled our women's self groups to access loans from banks. This was a very important development, and Andhra Pradesh was a state which at one time used to account for 50% of the bank credit to SHGs in the entire country. So even now the southern states, 4-5 southern states account for 80% of the bank loans to the SHGs, again because of the strength of the SHG system. So I just want to introduce one more concept here. The self-help groups, the village organizations, the Mandal Samakyas, they're all community-owned institutions. So except women, there are no other members in these organizations. There's no ex officio membership. There's not, that any village head or village local self-government leader can get into these federations. It is owned institutions. So we call them as institutions of the poor. But to catalyze this, you require NGOs, you require government, you require local self-government, you require banks. So I call these institutions as the support institutions or institutions for the poor. So both are required, but at some stage, the process gets solid when these institutions of the poor also become institutions for the poor. So just keep this concept in your mind that the institutions of the poor are distinct from the organizations who are supporting them. It could be government, it could be NGOs, it could be a philanthropy, it could be local self-government, but all of them are external to the organizations of the people. So there will be some tension between the two institutions. So therefore, sometimes the institutions for the poor try to control the institutions. So there will be a tension. So I just wanted to point out that there are two distinct categories of institutions. And we also made the self-help groups through their own savings and also by provisioning, seed capital or revolving fund to the Mandal Samakya and village organizations. So we created multiple banks. So the members could borrow from the commercial banks through their self-help group, but they could also borrow from their own self-help groups equity or borrow from their federations. So as you can see here, a member has multiple banks, a formal bank, but also their own community-owned banks, 3 banks here. So this multiple options for finance are also extremely critical. Uh, so in these 10 years, we trained more than 2 million women leaders to manage their affairs, manage their institutions, and around 180,000 community professionals to provide support around finance, livelihoods, social security, health, because we introduced multiple sustainable agriculture, dairy. So for each of these verticals, we call them, we trained community professionals to do the work. And then these 20,000 community resource persons are women leaders whose lives have been transformed and who are willing to take their lessons to others. And with the example of the one Mandal Samakya, I will tell you what these wonderful women have achieved. So this is one Mandal Samakya in one of the districts. It's called Orvakal Mandal Samakya. It's a source of inspiration for me. Extraordinary work that they have done. So they were actually precursor to SERP. They had been organized under a program started by UNDP as a pilot project called the South Asia Poverty Alleviation Program in 1995. So this federation came into existence in 97. So it's a 24-year-old organization. So what have they done? First, identification of the poor by the poor. So it is the people who identify who are the poor, not the government agencies. Then helping them to organize themselves, building their capacities to unleash their potential, enable them access to finances, enable them or work with them to choose livelihoods, then social development around health issues, sanitation, other social development, gender equity, domestic violence, all these have to be addressed. And then also creating safety nets like pensions and other support. So, so, so the women themselves have set a development agenda for themselves and also have allocated responsibilities for achieving the task. And this is the way they picturize it. So the groups, the self-help group is the foundation. The village organization, they call them the walls of the house, and the Mandal Samakya as the roof. It's their pictorial representation of their their organizations. And as you can see, this Mandal Samakya is representing 12,500 women, all of whom are organized. And you can see here, this is Fakirama. She is a SHG leader, was also leader of our village federation. So her mother-in-law is a member of the group. Now she might have retired. She looks, old. And Fakirama's daughter-in-law has joined the group. So it becomes a norm, a cultural norm, that a woman who comes to the village by marriage automatically joins a group. So it becomes a norm that this is something very automatically done in a village. Now look at this group. They started with just the savings of 30 rupees per month. But today the savings are around 500 rupees a month. So they believe in increasing their own equity. And you just see how they have multiplied their money. So their savings were around 215 million rupees, and the interest accumulated on that is around 124 million. So about 340 million rupees is what these wonderful women have saved in their groups in all these years. But with that, they were able to leverage bank loans of around 2 billion rupees from various organizations, banks, essentially commercial banks. And they also distributed dividends of around 73 million rupees to their members. And the Mandal Samakya, in addition, has contributed about 5 million for public causes, including flood relief, including providing their services to cyclone affected people in some other district, not their district. This is their wonderful training center. And as they mentioned, 45,000 members and people from all over the country have actually visited this center and been trained there. And this is an incredible achievement of this Mandal Samakya. They have pooled their money and built their own school because they said that our children must get the best education. This is the staff of the Mandal Samakya. So they have about 43 cluster facilitators, then accountants for the Mandal Samakya. This is the training faculty. This, of course, is the staff for the school. And these are those community resource persons, those incredible women heroes. They have gone to all the states in the country. I'll just tell you where all they went. So in the first phase, they went to 6 states. We sent them to different districts in our state to incubate, to trigger the social mobilization. But in addition, they have gone to another 10 states in the country. So so these great women have actually spread this message of hope, of what happens when you organize yourself, what miracles happen, how you unleash your energies by organizing yourself. So this is the heroes from within. And as I mentioned, the potential in a poor person is extraordinary. And it is these groups which enable this potential to be unleashed. And these wonderful women have actually shown that. Now, what is the picture in the entire state? In Andhra Pradesh, because the state bifurcation took place in 2014. So we have about 8.7 million women who are organized in groups, and into around 8.4, 840 groups, 40,000 groups, 28,000 federations, 662 Mandal Samakyas, and 13 district federations. And they have trained, they have a social capital of around 2 million people, their leaders and community professionals. So this is the wealth of the women's institutions in our state as of now. And you can see here, they have about 86 billion rupees of savings. So their corpus is around 97 billion rupees. And this is 8 billion is what we had given to the women through the government. But see this figure here, they have accessed around 420 billion rupees from the banks in the last 6 years. And the government set up a bank for women. It's managed by SERP. So this enables women to get loans, much faster than they can get from the banks. So this bank has actually disbursed about 90 billion rupees in the last 5 years. And the government has actually given a grant of 112 billion rupees for the self-help groups as a contribution from the government to improve their livelihoods, and in some case as a means of capitalizing the self-help groups. And in just 1 year, that is 2020-21, these groups collectively have accessed 161 billion rupees from the banks, from the commercial banks. Government also provides interest subvention to the members, so that in some cases it's actually entire interest borne by the members is actually subsidized by the government. If it's beyond a certain level, then they cap this to around that women pay only 3% per annum interest. Rest is paid by the government. So for loans below 300,000, actually the entire interest is borne by the state government. So I have not shown the other costs borne by the government, apart from the costs in building these groups, maintaining the groups, etc. Now, what happened? What is the poverty eradication strategy when we build these groups? So we look at two different value chains. One is the livelihoods value chain. That means how do we work on their agriculture to make it more profitable, agriculture, then dairy, then there are non-farm livelihoods, also skill development, then entrepreneurship, and also marketing. So this we call as a livelihoods value chain, which is triggered by the women self-help groups borrowing from the banks, but also this requires building their knowledge around agriculture, around livestock, around each of these verticals. In addition, around the what we call as the social development or human development, we are looking at how do you improve health and nutrition, uh, how do they interact with the education institutions to improve the education access, quality of education for their children, social inclusion. How do you ensure the most vulnerable are not left out? And then how do you ensure gender equity? Because in spite of the fact that they're all women self-help groups, we still find that there's a lot of domestic violence, there is discrimination against the girl child. So we have very specific strategies around this, and then social security. Uh, so now you can see how much effort is required to build capacities on all these areas. So the investment by SERP is basically investment in building institutions, what we call IB, and investment in building their capacities. This is government investment. And what we TFI, this is the financial inclusion. This is how do they get capital for pursuing their livelihoods or pursuing their education requirements and other requirements. Uh, so now it's very easy to sum it up in one slide, but this has been the goal of our and continues to be the goal of our work. Now I'll spend a few minutes on what this means to us in taking natural farming forward. So when I was in SERP way back in 2000 to 2010, in 2005, with the help of some NGOs, we had actually initiated the community managed sustainable agriculture program through SHGs. And so when I came back and initiated the zero budget natural farming in 2015, I knew that I had to base it on the work that I had done earlier. So from 2016 onwards, we've been right from the beginning, we've been working through the women's self-help groups, working with the women's self-help group, and we are now about to enter into a formal partnership with SERP in taking this, in a more, in a much more comprehensive manner. So we are looking at how do we communitize our program. So RYSS remains a catalyst, but the real work, the heavy lifting is done by the leaders, by the women leaders, by young professionals hired by the women. So today in our project, more than 123,000 women self-help groups are implementing the national farming program. This is around 5,000 village organizations. Then we recognize the landless poor as very important part of our program. So this year, we were able to ensure that 75% of them were able to take up one livelihood activity, which is very critical, is about homestead gardens. I'll also mention that. Then we insist, we first go to the SHG leaders and motivate them to practice natural farming. Because once the leaders start practicing natural farming, enjoying the benefits, then they are the biggest brand ambassadors among the 10 families in that group. So this is basically our strategy. And this is our footprint for natural farming. 2016, we started with 40,000 farmers. And this year we have, in spite of COVID, we had a little more ambitious plan, but on account of COVID, we had some problems. But still, we were able to enroll around 750,000 farmers and farm workers in 3,730 villages. And in 2021, the current year, Our target is to go to 1.1 million farmers and farm workers. And by 2031, so we want to ensure that all 6 million farmers and around 2 million farm workers are part of this process. In the current program, we have a commitment of government to a tune of $250 million for this agriculture transformation up to 2024. We're also supported by a philanthropy for about $16 million. And now in this, out of this 123,000 groups, we have gone to every self-help group and the groups have done planning. You can see one of them doing their planning. And what we find is there are about 800,000 members who have lands and who are taking up farming work. Around 100,000 are having non-agriculture occupations. 360,000 are landless, what we call as poorest of the poor. So we have distinct strategies for members who have lands. And as you can see, out of 814,000, 700,000 have enrolled. We have about 138 in these 138,000 in these villages whom we have to convince over the next 1 or 2 years. So every self-help group prepares a plan of action. They identify who is not practicing, who is practicing. Then the group leaders take it as their responsibility to motivate the people who are not practicing. They share their experiences. The community resource persons, our farmer trainers visit the groups. For them also, once they visit a group, that's almost reaching out to 10 people. So the self-help group architecture makes this transformation a doable task. Otherwise, it will be very difficult to reach these numbers in a meaningful manner. So as you can see here, the women self-help groups are responsible for program management. They ensure transparency. They undertake collective action. They learn from each other. They prepare plans. And most important is, they're not just producers, they're also consumers. So therefore, this also governs, dictates their choice of crops in the main fields or in their own homestead gardens. And the ethos of the women self-help group is that in every meeting, they have to see what are the needs of the poorest member within the group. And similarly, the federation's responsibility is to look at the groups where the most vulnerable groups. So they prioritize them for action. So this enables a consistent pro-poor approach to be adopted by us. So this is a multiple roles of the women self-help groups in our program. And this is a training. Here they are preparing the bio input themselves. Here the seed kits are being distributed. And these are homestead gardens. For landless poor, we're also facilitating land lease. We're also looking at developing assigned lands. And then we're looking at them in having off-farm livelihoods and also in marketing. So we know that the poorest require special attention, and their health is important. So if they work in farms where fertilizers are used, they're compromising their health, and their own household security, food security is improved through the homestead gardens. These have become very popular. Now we have models where they can get 12 months of the year, about 15 to 20 different vegetables and also fruit trees. So I'll conclude here just to mention that building social capital is extremely critical if we have to achieve SDGs. If we have to eliminate hunger, eradicate poverty, have gender equity, build a society, which is, or a livelihood which is climate resilient, or also can mitigate climate change. Without this basic pillar of social capital, will not be able to achieve our objective. That is number one. Number two, there's also a science behind this. It doesn't happen in a haphazard manner. It's very critical to have the right kind of ethos in the organization, which I'm sure all of you being such dedicated NGOs, is part of your DNA, is, people's participation. Building their own organizations is really the key. But it's also important that, the NGOs or government should be mindful of not encroaching on the powers of the institutions of the poor. So you have to have a very careful division of subjects, responsibilities. So one who is nurturing should not be smothering. It's a very tough call. So it's a thin dividing line. So when do you become somebody who is nurturing, and when do you become somebody who is smothering? So it's not easy. And I'm saying this because, in this process, I don't know how many mistakes I have made. So it's a process of learning from our own mistakes. I just want to conclude by thanking all of you, thanking AFSA, thank you, Million particularly. With just a plea that, the work that you are doing is so important. And if there's any way that work can be accelerated, the work can be done better, I would strongly suggest, if there is something that you can learn, something you see useful to you from whatever I have mentioned, we'd be very happy to share, many more, things, practical toolkits and other things in this case. So I'll conclude here, Ferdinand, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Vijay. This is very powerful, and you have indeed opened your toolbox. And I tell you, the tools you have used here are very powerful in terms of changing livelihoods. And we can see from third generation, growth in savings, growth in institutions, and spread to other states, up to 8 million, and the work is still in progress. Thank you so much. And at this point, we want to also hear some voices from Africa. Mother Africa has its women, and we want to hear voices from the Rural Women's Assembly. And just 2 minutes. Each one of them is going to share what are the threads. We want to join the threads, and what is it that we can learn from your presentation. So kindly, Thandindwe Chindavarume from Zimbabwe, if you can hear me, kindly unmute yourself and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Vijay, for sharing such an in-depth explanation of the journey that you have so far traveled in terms of mobilizing rural women into such a powerful and wonderful group. And we have seen a lot of tangible projects that are coming up from the works of the rural women. Thank you so much. We are Rural Women's Assembly, which is also a self-organizing group of rural women. We started around 2009 when we met in South Africa as a group. We shared a lot of challenges that we are facing as rural women. And then we decided that no one is going to take us out of the poverty, out of the challenges that we are facing as rural women. And we decided to start organizing. We went back to our home countries and we started organizing and mobilizing. And I would want to say that although we are still few in terms of the numbers that we get from Vijay, but we are happy with the achievements that we have made so far. We've been influencing our governments in terms of supporting agriculture and the kind of agriculture that we want. We want food sovereignty, not food security. We want the kind of food that we would want to eat, not that they want us to eat. The kind of food that is healthy for us and our children. And we also continue to lobby for our land rights as rural women. We are the tillers of the land, and our contributions to agriculture has never been recognized as rural women, but we continue to raise our voices, and we are beginning to see a lot of appreciation because of our organizing, because of our work, because of our mobilizing. We are continuing to knock doors. We are continuing to influence policies. I want to speak for Zimbabwe.
Please unmute yourself, Thandindwe.
Hello.
Yes, proceed.
At what point did you miss me?
Just for a few seconds, please proceed.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, I was saying that as for Zimbabwe, we are now an organized group of part of the Southern African Rural Women's Assembly, and we've got close to 50,000 members, and we continue to also grow. And I'm sure through the lessons that we have got from Vijay from India, we are going to grow even much faster. And what I've also learned from Vijay is the issue of financial support, which we have. Yes, we have some small self-help groups and some rural women savings, but we are still struggling in terms of raising funds to support our enterprises as rural women. And I've also appreciated the fact that we have a lot of potential. And yes, that potential, we know, we feel it, we have the strength to use it, and also to change our lives, and even to change the economy of our countries if we continue to mobilize, we continue to work together. And yeah, I think we would like to learn more from Vijay and the women that he's working with, and also to share with them some of the great works that we have done. We have logged at regional level, that is at SADC level, for the support of smallholder farmers through the FISP program, the Farmer Support Input Program, which was taken aboard by the governments. It was coming from from us, the rural women farmers, after having raised our voices as a movement, as an organized group. And we also feel the recognition that we are beginning to get from the powers that be. I will end here and let my colleague also add. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Thandindwe. In fact, it's important that African women have the strength. Thank you for your comments. And if you have any question to Vijay, please, you can write them on the chat, and we'll sample them at the end of the presentations. Now we go down south, and Renette, if you can hear me, please, if you can unmute yourself, and just 2 minutes, please keep to the time.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to be part of such an inspirational presentation given by our fellow comrade. So my name is Renette Jennis. I'm from a very small community called Seabrak in South Africa in the Western Cape. And I'm part of the Rural Women's Assembly in South Africa. And as my sister was saying, the Rural Women's Assembly is a platform or a movement where the rural women can raise their voice and put issues on the table. And I think in broader broader perspective, especially in South Africa, we as women in South Africa are really struggling with access to land. And so that is a very critical point where we are going to the union building, where we have a march to have a demonstration on the 1 woman, 1 hectare. And the past weeks we was continuing to have a dialogue about, because that is all that we are asking. Very simple is to have 1 hectare for each woman that is planting, because most of our women currently is farming their backyard. And so the Rural Women's Assembly is also a platform where rural women can speak out and raise their voices. So we have different activities happening in South Africa, in the Rural Women's Assembly. Like we have study circles where women will come together, where women will do their craft, and where women can show what they show and say, but also do our study circle where also raise the issues of gender-based violence that is currently a big issue in our country. So in this place, the assembly can have the woman can have contact and can say, but this is happening and I don't know how to talk, but there's a platform that the Rural Women's Assembly have created so that we can that the woman can speak out. Also, what we are doing is we have open days where we will have sessions where, especially this will make focusing on agroecology. So we will help our women and share on the practical skills on what is agroecology, and so how to use recycled material and all of this. So this is the platforms that we are using. We are having quarterly, we will do trainings. We will bring women from all over South Africa together and have agroecology training sessions, because that's important that we, comrade was saying, we have to emphasize and we have to, because my sister was talking about, we don't want to talk, our government is talking, still are talking about food security, and food security we are not talking about, we are talking about food sovereignty, because we need to eat healthy, we need to, because if we are going to eat healthy, then we will be able to have we don't have going to have a lot of sickness in our society. And also I also want to talk about the Rural Women's Assembly is also having a series of books that has been coming out. So the first one is recipes, where the women were sharing their recipes, indigenous recipes from their mothers, their grandmothers. Then we were having a herb series, a second book where we were sharing different methods on medicinal herbs that you can use. So you don't have to go to the clinic, or you don't have to go to the doctor. You can use herbs that is growing in your village, in your areas. Then we was having a recipe, the recipe booklet, where we was talking specifically on the recipes that you can use for your when we are growing crops. So that is also important. And then we was having the fourth one that we was having was how to use your waste, how to use recycled material in making things that you can sell at the end of the day. Our comrade was talking that we need to start saving, and that is what we are also invent to do in our communities with our rural women, that they can also use the platform that we can create, the platform for them to use material that is laying around and that they can make an income for them. So yeah, I think that is what we as rural women are trying to do, and we are not having this big numbers, but we are trying to get numbers. So yeah, I think that is from my side, what we as Rural Women's Assembly. And for my comrade in India, good, keep up the good, that the women are so strong. And I think women, nowadays we need to see that woman is the backbone of everything that is happening in countries. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rinette. And you have well put it that your organization is providing space for women to speak and raise their voice, and they are sharing lots of experiences, and they are also custodians of knowledge. I can see a few hands being raised and some questions being posed that Vijay didn't mention any men. I hope he will answer where men were in these processes. And I've recognized some hands being raised, but kindly, if you will see me putting my hands together, realize that you wind up and just go to the point. I will give you a chance, Makanya, but let Flida just share with us feedback from Mozambique, and then Makanya, I will give you an opportunity to speak.
Hi, everyone.
Yes, hi.
I'm Flida. I'm going to unmute my video because my internet sometimes is not stable. So I'm Flida from Mozambique. A lot has been said because we are part of this big organization or this big movement, Rural Women's Assembly. I would like only to bring the issues that my sisters did not bring here. At Rural Women's Assembly, we say we are the guardians of land, love, and seeds. So somehow this is our motto. And we say in our countries, if women do not plant, do not produce, the city will die of hunger. So we know and we are sure that the rural women are busy producing, are busy organizing themselves. And I like this idea from my brother from India who says, the poor are organizing the poor and supporting the poor. So it's not an issue of sitting and waiting for the others or the rich people to bring you the things. It's to build from below, and this sense of ownership. And this is what we're trying to do with the rural women, organizing themselves, and also the issue of capacity building, because we know most women have the capacity to do things, but isolated. Sometimes we can't reach where we want to reach. So we try to bring the women together. And the case of Mozambique, for example, the issue of climate changes, it's a big issue because we are on the border. We are by Indian Ocean. So either we have floods or we have droughts, and we feel that every year. So we are trying to build alternatives, going for agroecology, trying to use our seeds to be able to produce. And most of the women here do agriculture. So if we don't have land, for us, it's a big issue. We are trying to, influence the policy makers to guarantee that there is land for women. And it's not only issue of access, but also we want women to own land, because if you work on a land that does not belong to you, somehow you lose it, and all that you've created, the years that you've worked on this land, you end up losing everything. So land is an issue for us. And what my sisters also were saying, food sovereignty, yes, we say no to GMOs. We want to use our indigenous seeds that we can, we can keep them, we can grow them. Even if there is drought, we can still keep produce. But also this idea that our brother also brought of community savings, finances, the issue of finances. Sometimes we rely on our donors, but we know that agriculture, it's not financed because they say it's a very risky activity. So we are trying to build our own, how can I say, sustainability. So we are doing a lot of community savings. We are not in that level of India, but we hope one day we will reach there. And we've started, and there is a lot going on. But most, I would emphasize that if women come together and they know, their goal, and things are built from below, we can reach far.
Thank you, Flida. Indeed, words of hope. One day we will reach there. I've seen the hand of Zachary Makanya. We want to hear maybe what he has to say, some comments, and please unmute yourself, Zachary, and proceed.
Thank you very much, Ferdinand. I think I'm very happy that for this forum, for me, I believe in networking. So I believe we are taking notes, listening from this wise man from called Vijay Kumar from India. These are good things that we are learning together. Secondly, I wanted to request if he can send the handout, I mean the presentation, so that you can look at it further. That I wanted him to, if he can share with us some success cases from the ground. Because as I talk now, as you can see, I am under UG3. We have some farmers here. We are training them and we are trying to do social distancing. That's why you see I'm covering my face with a mask. But well done, the organizers for this meeting, Ferdinand and friends, and your co-chair, Mariam Bese, I know you. God bless you and keep up the good work. Let us keep learning from each other, because when you keep learning from each other, then we can run the best practices and you can do things which can benefit people on the ground. Otherwise, thank you very much and God bless you.
Most welcome, Zachary. And these proceedings are being recorded and they will be distributed. And I'm sure you'll get a recorded version of this. And also thank you for your compliments. And now we also want to hear any comments and compliments. Vijay, maybe we'll give you a chance to also respond to where men were while this process was being developed. Would you just kindly have time?
Yeah, sure. I've been seeing some comments. I thought I'll respond to them. But I think the Rural Women's Assembly for the comments that they have made. But I just want to emphasize how important it is to access finance. So access to finance at low rates of interest, because I've seen the microfinance companies actually charging very high rates of interest, and because the government system is not responding. So I think Africa, India, Bangladesh, Asia. So the private companies are actually charging a lot of money from the poor. So if you don't build up the savings, if you don't build your own savings, and also have policies for the banks, in India, the banks have recognized the women's self-help group as a corporate entity by itself. So therefore, they can extend collateral-free loans. So initially, it was very difficult to get loans from the banks, but now the government, the central government, has insisted that banks should extend loans to the self-help group, even though they are unregistered entities. So they have asked them to extend loans. Initially, it was about 500,000 rupee loan without collateral. Now I think it has become 1 million rupees without collateral. So I think in Africa, there has to be pressure on governments and on the banks to pay attention to this. Otherwise, you have private sector, I don't know, microfinance companies must be there in Africa. I've been hearing a lot about their activities of charging 24% interest, 36% interest. So whatever the poor women or poor man, whatever they're earning, a lot of money is being bled out of them to these glorified money lenders. So there is you build your own equity, you build your own banks, the women's own banks. That is one option. But as I mentioned, we have multiple banks options for our women. So I think that is something which is a policy issue. But you can agitate with your government. You can mention what is the structure in India to do this. Now, coming to the question of men, I know I am asked this question very often. The reason why we went into organizing women was that experience has shown, experience in Asia, I don't know about Africa, but experience in Asia has shown that building organizations of men is very difficult. So I think there's something special about women, their ability to, to be together, to share their problem, to do, to struggle collectively is a special strength of the women. We must recognize that. I have not seen very successful examples of men's organizations, I mean, at least in the last 40, 50 years I've been in development sector for about 37 years. I have not seen that. So, so I would like to bet on what works. The second thing is, among rural women in India, we have seen around 25 to 30% households are actually women-headed households. So for them, being members of the self-help group is really a godsend. So the kind of assurance a woman, gets in this group, because she sees this as an extended family. So that's again the reason. And then because of patriarchy, because it's there in all societies, maybe less in Africa, but because of patriarchy, the woman's position in the household is, much inferior on many parameters. So we believe that by organizing women, her position within the household also improves. Her role in decision making improves. Her role in, where to spend the money, on which issues. So her voice there increases. So that's the reason why we went for organizing women. At the same time, women represents the family. So when she's taking a loan for some activity, we have a process, what we call it as a household investment plan. So she goes to, after the meeting, she goes back, she discusses with her husband, with her children. So the family as such comes up with a priority. So even though it is a group of women, but ultimately a woman is representing her entire family. If she's taking a loan, it could be for her children's education. It could be for farming where both husband and wife are involved. So, least of all, we tell them that you should worry about yourself, but most of the time they're worrying about their husband or children. So, and that is again the strength of a woman or a weakness of a woman. They always think of others. So that's why, we are able to sort of get along our lives happily because of that concern. So it's not women versus men. I just want to mention that. Women is more vulnerable within a household. So by organizing a woman, we are also ensuring greater equity within the household. B, women represents a household. So she is also borrowing for her household's requirement, but the women have the discipline or have that long-term determination to be members of groups and resolve issues. So I'm asked this question very often, but I just want to say it is not man versus woman. And once her economic condition improves, she gets a better voice within the household. So farming decisions, for instance. And agroecology actually is a great way to improve women's voice in agriculture because, they don't have to buy anything from the market. If they have to make it themselves, both husband and wife or as a collective, they have to prepare the inputs themselves. They have to, manage the land. So absolutely. So I just want to say that it's not man versus women. Women represents the family, and therefore investing in a woman is, win-win-win for everybody.
Thank you, Vijay. That is powerful. Women represent the households, and households represent communities, and I believe communities represent our nations.
Absolutely.
And it's not men against women. And why focus on women? Again, it is the best bet. This is what works. These are very, very, very important works. I mean, powerful words. And thank you for your kind and words of wisdom. Now we're running short of time. We have about 7 minutes to go. And I've seen one comment I just want to pick here, and maybe a question. Maybe we'll wrap up from there. All this money that has been saved seem to be coming from a certain source. And you are doing agriculture. How is the marketing organized so that these women are able to generate lots of money?
Right. See, the money comes from multiple sources, their own savings, and what they borrow from their group, what they borrow from the banks. At the same time, in terms of marketing, the first of all, if you're looking at a rural poor household, the increase in production and the diversity of crops actually first ensures food sovereignty and food security. Both are achieved. And for marketing surpluses, so the women's collectives play a role. And at the same time, we have some NGOs who are facilitating this. But as a government, we have not yet have a separate marketing channel. But what we are seeing in our program is that the costs have decreased very significantly once those who have transformed into agroecology. The yields are increasing. So even if they sell at a same price as others, they're not incurring a loss. So it's not. Yes, as a farmer, I'll be happy to get a better price, but I'm not put to an economic loss by switching over to agroecology. So there is a lot of work to be done by the women's groups, farmers organizations. But I believe that should be a later intervention. But the first is by transforming land through agroecology, there's a lot of savings in the household. Riskiness has gone down. Now, somebody mentioned droughts. We have, by following agroecology, our farmers have become resilient to droughts. In spite of lack of rains, as I mentioned in my first presentation, the natural farming is ensuring that they're able to get their full crop even if their neighbors who follow chemical agriculture have lost their crops. So even without any great effort in marketing, the household economy is much improved. So there's no compulsion, there's no great desperation that there has to be a premium for marketing.
Thank you. That is quite inspiring. If households are actually marketing surpluses, and that the role of NGOs here and other networks is actually to catalyze this process. This
Yes.
is well taken and very good learning points.
Ferdinand, I just want to make a suggestion.
Please do.
Because, this the material, my presentation and the one that I've shared, obviously, it's also something that the groups can reflect upon. If required, we can have a follow-up meeting to take upon many questions that have come. Many more may come when they go through the material, when they reflect. So, but in that meeting, I'll bring our own women champions to answer. So rather than my answering, so I'll have a set of our heroes, as I call them. So then they can, and some of them can share their transformation experiences, because some people asked, do you have examples of groups who have really become self-reliant? In fact, you see, it takes 1 or 2 generations, because poverty has been with them for hundreds of years. You can't say it will go in 5 years, it can go in a project mode. I don't think so. And the way out of poverty need not be only through agriculture. many of our women who joined the self-help groups in 95, 2000, 2005, now their children are in colleges. They wouldn't have imagined that their children will go to school or go to colleges and they are having jobs. Some of them have come back, are doing agriculture. So the pathway out of poverty, pathway for a decent livelihood is also very varied. So ultimately this group is like an extended family. So, and their strength comes from being, organized, thinking, for helping each other. So it's a very powerful group. And in fact, even the politicians, governments have changed many policies because of the group. I'm sure in Africa, you must be, there must be a lot of exploitation by these private sector microfinance banks. In our country, thanks to these women's self-help groups, many states, not only Andhra Pradesh, central government, many states have said that any interest above 3% per annum will be subsidized by the government. So that reduces the risk for the household. Of course, in Andhra Pradesh, the state government has gone one step forward. They said zero interest. So that's of course. But then this came about because of the power of the women. If they were not there, nobody would be bothered to make these changes. So I'm sure there will be a lot of issues around policies, around practices. So if you people are interested, then we can have a discussion around policies, around practices, around what our women have achieved. So I'm open to that, and I leave it to you and your team to take a call on this.
So any last comments just to appreciate Vijay? Marian, welcome.
Well, thank you. I don't know, this has been very, very inspiring and amazing time for us as AFSA, members, our partners, to learn this and finding time to take us through this amazing circle of how things are done in that state, and it's actually working. I mean, it goes to show a long way that when people come together and they put their mind on something, anything can be achieved. I mean, it's from little drops of water that we have an ocean. So on behalf of AFSA, we want to say a very big thank you for your time, Vijay. This has been very inspiring. I hope you will come back again. When it allows the world to travel, maybe most of us will come to and see physically this demonstration in Andhra Pradesh. I want to say a very, very big thank you. In Africa, we say it 3 times. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And it comes from our hearts. And I want to thank all the participants. I mean, it's a world of Zoom. Most people have like 10 Zooms a day, so many things trying to compete for our time. We found time to be part of this meeting. We are very grateful. We thank our interpreters. We thank the facilitator. I thank Michael. I thank the organizers. I mean, those who put their heads together to make sure that this program is a success. I'll just say a very big thank you. I pray that we are well and safe, and that God willing, we will meet again physically to continue the discussion. No, I thank you and have a very blessed and amazing weekend. Thank you so much.
Thank you. But thank you very much. It's such an honor.
Thank you.
It's really a privilege to speak to all of you and to listen to your comments. So I must also say thank you, thank you, thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Most welcome, and to everybody, wish you well and keep watching this space as we plan for other coming sessions. Thank you so much, and bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. The presenters, thank you. The women leaders, thank you. Everyone, thank you so much.